What we'll be doing here, I'll let you know how long you have to answer each question before I pose it, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And he will cut you off when it's time for your answer to end.
Yes, ma'am.
You will have 1 minute for your first question, Lloyd.
Yes, ma'am.
Which political leader from the past 50 years, other than Ronald Reagan, would you see as a role model?
I think probably Bill Emerson. Bill was my friend. He was my mentor. We rode up and down the highways together. We sang a few songs, a few gospel songs, even though at times we thought maybe we ought to keep the windows up or we might be violating some EPA rule. He was a fighter in the Congress, and he was a friend at home. He was the most genuine person I think I've ever met in politics, and he always tried to do the right thing for the right reasons. There were no Democrats or Republicans when they called our office. There were constituents. They were constituents of the 8th Congressional District that he loved and that he served, and I learned so much from him that is that person for me.
Okay, thanks, Lloyd. 1 minute for this answer, if you would, please. In what specific ways would you help to support and unite the Republican Party in this district?
You know, back in 1981, I sat across the desk from Bill Emerson at 339 Broadway. It was a cold February day, and he was offering me a job as his ag assistant. And I looked at him and I said, you know, Bill, what are the odds of a Republican getting elected in this place? And I said, when you're not elected, I'll be out of a job. And he said two things. I need loyalty, and let's do what's right for the folks. I think to build the Republican Party, we need to build on what we're already doing. We need to find good candidates, we need to support them, and we need to equip them with the kinds of things that they need in order to win. When we were recruiting people in the Boot Hill in that Democratic area, I'll never forget, we had to have an intervention, if you will, with Peter Myers twice. And his wife went in the other room, and someone said, what's she doing? I said, she's praying. They said, I sure hope God's a Republican.
2 minutes for this answer. Given the 8th District's vulnerability to natural disasters, what will be your approach to funding for FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers with the current budget crisis?
You know, natural disasters best are prevented. And a lot of what the Corps of Engineers has done over the years has been helpful. Some of those things have been hurtful. There have been times when you've had to go to the Corps of Engineers and explain, like my grandmother used to say, explain to them that what they were doing was not working. I remember a time, there's a gentleman here this evening, when we were fighting to make sure that we raised a levee by about 2.5 feet. And they were explaining to us how their model showed that the water wasn't going to overtop it. And we said, well, that may be what your model's showing, but if you'll go down there and look, we're within 15 inches of overtopping a mainline levee that will put 16 feet of water on Sikeston in less than 72 hours. Sometimes you have to go and do the right thing up front to prevent natural disasters. FEMA, on the other hand, is an agency that after Katrina ran its flood insurance program so far in debt that now they're trying to reach out and put everybody in floodplains, even if they're not in floodplains. The best thing you can do with both FEMA and the Corps of Engineers is for Congress to do something they've not been doing, and that is oversight. You drag them in, you ask the tough questions. You ask them why they're making a farmer have a 404 permit to remove gravel off of his farm outside of Marble Hill, just outside of Glen Allen, because that's the person that in truth is the landowner. And we've got to make sure that we have the right regulations, but we've also got to make sure that Congress exercises oversight to stop over-regulation time and time again. FEMA is an overreach at times with what they're doing with their flood maps, and we have to hold them accountable each and every time. Congress exercising oversight will be the best remedy for FEMA and the Corps of Engineers.
2 minutes for this answer, Lloyd. What is your position on reauthorizing the 2008 Farm Bill, which expired September 30th, 2012? And please be specific.
I didn't hear the last part. The farm Bill?
Yes, it expired September 30th, 2012.
You know, the original Farm Bill, and most of you in here probably know this, was started way back in about 1916. And then fast forward to the 1930s, and it was a different time and a different place. They actually set up a farm bill, and this is what it was called. The title was the Food and Security. And basically it was to protect our food supply, because they thought it was a security issue for our country to be able to feed our people. Speed forward to today, we're no longer raising 65 and 75 bushel corn, except for this drought year. Sometimes we can raise 300 bushel corn, 250, 225 on irrigated ground. So what we need to do is decouple the old way of doing things with the Farm Bill, which was giving price supports and target prices and counter-cyclical payments. And we need to remove those and go back and say to the farmers, here's what we can do. We can offer a crop insurance program that's reasonable, but we're not going to send you checks for crops you don't plant. We're not going to send you counter-cyclical checks when soybeans and corn are at historical highs. So what we need to do is reevaluate the way that Food Security Act that was passed in the mid-1930s and then again in the 1940s, we need to revise it and we need to bring it into the 21st century. Farmers are risk management folks every day. They understand that, and the ones that I talk to really believe that that kind of farm bill needs to be changed from the old into the 21st century.
Okay, 2 minutes for this answer, Lloyd. How would you support economic development in the 8th District?
You know, the best thing that we can do for economic development in the 8th District, truthfully, is put predictability into the tax code and lower the deficit at the national level. Right now, there are so many small businesses that do not know what the future holds, and they're worried about over-regulation, over-taxation, and putting us in a situation where businesses are afraid to expand. And then you have Obamacare. It is probably the longest overreach of the federal government in my lifetime. And I go back a pretty good ways, as you can see with this gray hair. I want to tell you that when John Roberts voted the way he did, I thought he made probably the most gross mistake since Roe v. Wade. When his overreach basically was more interested in protecting the reputation of the Supreme Court than it was protecting the people of the country. I think the next thing that we need to do is make sure that our infrastructure in our area is into the 21st century. Our port authorities are moving more product now than ever before, both into our state and out of our state. And then I think the other thing that we have to do is look long-term at our energy policy. Just as John Kennedy said in 1960, we want to put a man on the moon inside of the decade. We can be independent of Middle East oil and secure our energy future inside of a decade. But we have got to do the right thing. We have got to use coal. We have got to drill offshore. We have got to give predictability on all of those things so our businesses can understand where the regulatory agencies are going to be, where tax policy is going to be, good infrastructure, and an energy policy that makes sense and puts America first, and it doesn't put those who give this particular administration a lot of money in the front seat.
Okay, Lloyd, this will be your final question for tonight. You have 1 minute to answer.
Yes.
Washington seems to be in gridlock. When, if ever, do you feel it's appropriate to compromise?
You know, it's interesting. Someone called the other day and they asked me about the fiscal cliff vote that happened here about 10, 12 days ago. And I said the real problem with that was we lost the high ground back in August of 2011. In 2011, we cut a deal expecting that we're going to win the White House, we're going to win the U.S. Senate, we're going to increase our numbers in the U.S. House. That's why this thing got all the way up, pushed up to 2012. I think what we need to do first and foremost is realize that we have a national debt problem. We have a problem that is so immense that we have to address it. Now, whether you go with Simpson-Bowles, which had both revenue enhancers, that's taxes in Washington speak, or cutting off programs, I think at this juncture, the first thing we have to do before we increase the debt limit is have a plan to cut spending. Without cutting spending, we will never get our debt under control. The kind of compromise I'm looking for is to get the president to compromise first.
All right, Lloyd. That is it for questions, but you do have 1.5 minutes now for your closing statement, whenever you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, I was raised in a small little town of East Prairie. The people on the north side of town didn't claim me because I was from Lower East Prairie. I know that's hard for you to believe. But I learned a lot from those people around me. Most of you know something else. My mother died when I was 12. There's only a few things that I ever agreed with Hillary Clinton on. The village of East Prairie really did help raise me. My church, my family, and my friends. What I want to do is go to Congress just like Bill Emerson went to Congress and do this. I want to be a fighter in Congress for you. I want to be a friend at home. I want to fight next to you on issues like the management plan of the ONSR. But folks, you can't do it all by yourself if you're a member of Congress. There's a good group out there called the Voice of the Ozarks that got together and they took on the Sierra Club. I want to lead in a way that we can make a difference in the 8th Congressional District for our future. I want to make sure that we protect our citizens by having the strongest national defense that we could possibly have. I do believe this. All of our liberties and freedom require us to have a strong national defense. I believe, as Ronald Reagan said, how much defense is enough defense? Enough to deter any would-be aggressor. To do anything less than that, I think we put our freedoms and liberty in jeopardy, both now and into the future. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your vote.
Thank you, Brad.